Welcome to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership, where you'll hear insights and useful strategies, as well as lessons learned from other nonprofit leaders and valuable tips from a variety of experts. Here to help you with the challenges and opportunities you face day after day is your host and nonprofit leadership expert, Sarah Olivieri.
Hello, nonprofit leaders, and welcome to your go-to place for information and inspiration to help you be even more effective. I'm your host, Sarah Olivieri, and you're listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Over the last 30 years, my guest for this episode has completely transformed and optimized hundreds of companies across the U.S., including companies such as Google, Procter Gamble, and Bridgestone, with her partner. Welcome, Tammy Rogers from the Become More group. And unfortunately, her partner, Scott Bergemeyer, couldn't be here today, but we'll welcome him in spirit as well. Together, they have reversed decade-long declines in business performance, solved tricky succession disputes, boosted employee retention figures, and much, much more. Tammy, before we dive into our topic today, would you share a little something about yourself personally so our audience can get to know you as a whole person?
Absolutely, because I have to tell you, you listen to those kind words that are written about you, and you're like, "Hey, I am actually just a normal human being." So, I'm going to give you one of my my little secrets that people don't know. I grew up in a super competitive family, and everybody in my family was a real athlete. I never really was. So, my sport was bowling,
Nice.
and when I a freshman in high school, I was the number 2 bowler in the state of Illinois, which is still like my claim of fame at all these years later, because trust me, that was a long time ago. So there's a tiny little thing about me.
I love it. And what a great segue. Today, we're going to be talking about leadership coaching, business performance, and all those things that you have great expertise in. So let's just start in with when you think about a great leader, can you just define that for me a little, like in your words? What makes for a great leader?
So we talk about something that we call the human business model. And it is really the balance between getting results done. And every organization, whether they're for profit or not for profit, we have to get a certain amount of results done in order to meet our mission or to be sustainable. So there is this results side of it. And we get results with and through people. And if we are too concentrated on the results side, what happens is we don't have great relationships with people, and the people that we need are not going to be there when we need them. And if we concentrate too much on, kissing babies and hugging trees, too much on the people side, we're not going to get the results. So as a leader, it's this delicate teeter-totter balance, right? And it's this thing, don't overweight on either side. And when there are times when you have to push for the results, remember, go back and take care of your folks, right? So that you're constantly making sure that these two things are balanced. So results and people married together, they're equally important, and keeping them in balance, good leaders do that.
I love that description. And it's not one that I have heard given before, but it makes so much sense to me thinking about those two things. And it makes me think about, as someone who also does coaching to leaders, thinking about different team members and what accountability they're given and whether or not they're in an appropriate position to be held accountable for an outcome, right? Have they been given the appropriate amount of authority to sway that outcome, or do they even want that outcome swaying responsibility? In my experience, I find, oftentimes great leaders are people who are up for the challenge of being accountable for something that they don't have direct control over, like an outcome, like a result. But not everybody's up for that, and not everybody has to be a leader. Uh,
Well, and we can lead in different ways. So if we talk about leading to get results, leading to move an organization forward, you can also lead with peers. And it is this place where it's saying, I don't have any formal leadership, but I am going to influence in a positive way. I'm going to move my peers, myself, the community that I touch I'm going to move forward and do things in a way that adds value. And I think that's the other thing. We can talk about formal leadership, yep, but you can also be an informal leader if you are willing to, well, informal leaders are good and bad. And I'm suggesting that if you are willing to put others first, if you are willing to do what's right for the whole, those types of things, in all honesty, I think you can lead from any seat.
Totally
So
agree.
I think that's the other
And that
side of
reminds
it.
me of a book that I read a while ago that I really liked, Keith Ferrazzi's Leading Without Authority, which he does a
Right.
great job on that subject. I want to talk a little bit about how do we create leaders who think strategically and build future leaders? Because I think, especially in every business, but in the nonprofit space where our missions are so important often, this is really essential. And I don't think it's something the nonprofit space has prioritized. And I think they should. So I'd love to ask you again, like, how do we create leaders who really are thinking strategically, building future leaders, maybe as opposed to um, thinking primarily about donors and their boards, right? I think so many nonprofit leaders get sucked up into this a human drama, if you will, rather than this strategic focus and this building your team focus.
If you think about this, Sarah, people come through an organization, and when you first come into an organization, someone tells you what to do. And your response as a really great employee is to say, thank you, let me go do that, right? And there comes a time period in that where you get to do those things and you're good at it, but it's task oriented. And it really is someone else is pointing out what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and in many cases, how it needs to be done. And as an organization, we can have a whole bunch of folks at that level, except for that doesn't help the organization grow, doesn't help the organization become more. It doesn't help us to actually achieve and be strategic in that spot. So one of these things about being, if I'm a formal leader inside of an organization, it's really sitting down and saying, how can I help this individual make good decisions independently of me, where they recognize things that need to be done and they can move forward and take care of those things instead of my always being the person who has the answer, always being the person who drives it, always the person that says we need to do this, this, and this, and this. And this is something that many leaders, they think their job is to tell others. I would disagree with that. I would tell you it's to grow someone to the place where they don't need you anymore, where they're making decisions that are aligned with the organization, that are helping the organization move forward. Their decisions may not be perfect because yours as the leader, they weren't perfect in the beginning either. You learned by doing, okay? So we don't need perfect decisions. We need people who are going to think it through, come to a conclusion, learn from that conclusion and move forward. And once we actually have people who can, so whatever that is in your organization, I need someone who can go and raise money. I need someone who can go run that program. I need someone who can go work with the people that we serve and do fill in the blank. Once you have people who can do that independently without you, you now have to change what you do as a leader.
Let's talk about that more. Because I think that's a gap that people are like, oh, well, now what? Right. And I think they're almost afraid of that. Well, then what will I do?
Well, and how do I add value?
Yeah.
Right? Because I add value by, I did all this other stuff. I was the person who told. I was the person who directed. I had value because I did and I directed. Okay? And we sometimes feel guilty for thinking. And we sometimes feel guilty for dreaming. And if you want to know the truth, strategy is about dreaming and thinking. And if you're in this operational, task-oriented, I can't do that, there's not enough money, the board won't let me, we've never done that before, those are the things that are keeping you back. And you are actually in a seat that is not what I would say is the top executive seat. The top executive seat says, I need to have everybody doing all this other stuff so I can dream and I can think, how could we? What if we? And it is that allowing yourself the space, okay? And stop feeling guilty about it. That's actually what we need you to do. Go dream a little. And in this space, too many executives, especially nonprofit executives, because we're made to do, we are giving. This is what happens. And so I'm out doing and giving to others. And I think this isn't what I should be spending my time on. When in reality, that's what your organization needs, because no one else is doing it. No one else can dream about that future except for you. And no one else can say, how could we?
I love that.
And that's the other thing. Don't say what I can't do. Say, how could I? How could we? Right? That spot starts to give you permission to go beyond what you've always done before and step into the become more space.
I think that really hits the nail on the head, that folks feel guilty. I'm completely in agreement with everything you said. And I have this little story, a vision of what I think an executive director at a nonprofit, and I prefer the term CEO, but so many people still use executive director. But what I think their week should look like it. So I'm just going to share it quickly. And I'd love it if you have a similar version or a different version of what you think their
Yep.
ideal week should look like in this true visionary seat. I think, they come in, if they have a building, they're walking around, seeing the programs going on, soaking it in, seeing it in space. Then they have lots of, I like to call it brain space. Maybe they just have an afternoon to sit and read a book, or they have multiple free afternoons, like 2 or 3, where they can have lunch with somebody who might be a thought partner, or read that book, or take a course, or whatever it is, go for a long walk, whatever they need to like get their brain juices going. And, then they have maybe a few check-ins with key people throughout the week to, for anybody who needs a bit of their exciting visioningness or what they did in that past around putting everything together. But it's a lot of just observing and thinking and having space to be an improviser. I think of it as a very creative role. And usually when I tell that to executive directors, they're like, "What? That could be my job?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what it should look like." So I'm wondering, do you have a vision, because I'm guessing you're pretty visionary, of what this week could look like for folks?
I do. And honestly, I want to fall in line with you. I want to live that life. And I would say many executive directors, many CEOs in this space, one, won't give themselves permission. But 2, they're putting out fires all the time. They're reactionary. What you're talking about is a world that doesn't have a ton of fires. And sometimes we talk about whack-a-moles, right? I'm going to whack this one over here, and then another one pops up, and there I go over and I whack that one. And I see our folks, especially in nonprofits, when we work so lean, most nonprofits don't have a whole bunch of extra bodies hanging, right? And so it seems like we're running from crisis to crisis. So I love what you're saying, that we need to give them space to observe, right? It is important to see what is happening. We need space to think. I completely agree with that. We need space to say, let's try it, right? That's your improvised word. Let's just try and learn. Agree with all. And I would think most people that are listening right now are thinking, I don't have any time for that.
Yeah.
Okay, none. Okay, so it's a great idea, but I have no time for that. And I'm going to say, make time. So while you can't do this 5 days a week, I get it. I think you can carve out an hour this week, just an hour, okay? And maybe it's in 15-minute increments. I'm okay with that, or half an hour increments. But if you actually put on your calendar that time, put it there, block it out. And then once you get 1 hour a week where you are in this state, now go for 2, and then 3, and then 4, because honestly, I think you need to spend somewhere in the vicinity of 15 to 25% of your time every day throughout your entire year doing exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that is the place where you get to be strategic. That is the place where you get to say what could be. It is the place where you dream. But if you don't block out the time, you will not get there and you'll keep playing whack-a-mole. So find an hour this week, just this week, okay? Even if it's 15-minute increments, first thing in the morning, last thing of the day, right? And I'm not saying at midnight after you've worked a 14-hour
during the business day, right? I'm glad you added that in.
Yeah, let's go ahead and finish at a reasonable hour, and maybe your last 15 minutes, that's fine. The other thing I love that you said, Sarah, is read. Oh, heavens, read or listen to podcasts.
That counts, right?
Whatever
As work.
that thing is. No, it is work. It's the place where you get inspired. You need input in order to have new output. And so every time you go and get something new, you don't have to take it hook, line, and sinker. Like, listen, consider what's in there that's cool. Write it down. Pretty soon, a whole bunch of stuff will add up, and this wonderful idea is going to pop out of your brain. And then you can go, let's try it and see what happens. And it doesn't have to be a perfect idea. It has to be something that we can learn from, experience, and then see what happens. That's the other thing we do. We wait for perfection instead of, let's do a little experiment and see what happens.
I love that. I love your version. And the calendar, folks, is so, like you said, block out the time, put it on your calendar. And, because I've had so many clients who are so far away from that. Maybe it starts with you block out lunch every day.
Yes. 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 And, to go back when I talked about the human business model, are you blocking out time with your staff? Because if you're not growing your staff, you're going to do whack-a-mole for the rest of your life. So are you very intentionally, purposefully saying, I'm going to spend an hour with my staff member. I'm going to spend and I'm not talking about an hour once every 6 months. At worst, an hour every other week.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to grow and develop those folks so that you make time for the other things. When they get better, they can take on more. You actually give the gift of time back to your organization.
Yeah, I love that. So much of what we've been talking about so far are totally the things that I see come up in coaching all the time. And it's about finding that level that a coaching client is at, right? Are they at the level where they need to be blocking out lunch for the first time? Or are they at that level where they're now thinking about, okay, no meetings on Mondays, no meetings on Thursdays, right? Like, this is where I check in with myself, putting all those things in. So let's talk a little bit about how you approach coaching and building awareness and building amazing leaders at nonprofits and for-profit businesses as someone who comes and supports from the outside.
That's a great question in this space. Coaching actually works really well with two things. One, I'm pretty self-aware. All right. So when I tell, I'm talking my truth as an individual, I am not seeing that through rosy glasses. I'm actually seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly. And every single human being comes with that. Okay. So when someone is pretty self-aware, that is a great place for coaching. The second piece is you got to want to be different. I mean, there's some coaching clients who they take great pride. I have a coach. Okay. Or they are inside of an organization and the organization says at this level, you get a coach, and so great. So in these spaces, it's not about, hey, I'm at this level and I get a coach. It's not this thing that says it's a status symbol. It is, are you ready to go beyond what you are today? Are you ready to dig into the places that, to be honest with you, it's not very much fun because, the things that you need to dig in are the things that you don't really want to work on because you would have already done it. Okay. And it's this place where it's hard and it's painful and sometimes it's emotional and you don't want to hear these things about yourself and you don't want to fight this fight. And there's a gift on the other side. And so one of the things I talk about, if you find yourself in life in a valley, right, this is a great place to be because a valley means you have the opportunity to climb the mountain. And are you going to go do the work to climb the mountain? Because the growth happens in the valley, in the pain, in the stuff you don't want to talk about, all that stuff. And sometimes you need a coach to ask you those hard questions, go through it. But if you're not willing to face it, don't spend the money on the coach. Don't waste anybody's time. You have to be willing and want to actually become more tomorrow than you are today. And without that, it's just an exercise. And some folks, Sarah, are not self-aware. Okay. There are a whole bunch of tools. We use some very specific tools that we love. Sarah, I'm guessing that you have tools
Certainly,
that you
but
love.
tell me what you
And
love. I'd love to hear it.
well, we are predictive index
Mm-hmm.
proponents. All right. And I don't know if you've ever
I haven't
used
used
that,
that.
but
Yeah.
it is, it takes about 6 minutes to complete, which is my favorite thing. Okay. We have hundreds and hundreds of validation studies that tells us that it's valid. It's been around since the 1950s. And, the piece about that we really love is it shows you what's awesome about you. All right. And with every pattern, and there are 17, right? There are 17 patterns. And with every pattern, there's a dark side. I happen to be a maverick. Okay. Great thing about mavericks, right? We will go try stuff. We are unafraid. So we're willing to take risks in that particular spot. And we drive to get stuff done. Love that about me. I'm not a great listener. Okay. And I sometimes think I'm right. Well, I shouldn't say that. I always think I'm right. So therefore, other people are not right. So I'm not making space for them. And because I am quick, I run, I drive, I can leave people behind in the dust. And when you leave people out behind in the dust, you are not bringing the team with you.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a great tool to be able to understand upside, the good, right? And then there's bad. And then there's stuff like, I think I'm right all the time. That's ugly, Sarah. I mean, that's kind of ugly. However, it's kind of true. And I need to modify, and all of us can modify, right? No matter what how you are made up, you can choose to do something else. And coaching can help you see that that's not helping you and help you choose other behaviors, even though that's really who you are. Okay. And so I don't choose to be mean and nasty, even though I can be by nature. Right. And I think there are a lot of people who are that way too, right? You can choose. And that's a great tool. We also use 360s very specifically because I want to hear what other people have to say as well. And I think that is another great tool so that I can get that. We don't necessarily do 360s where it's like, I want you to read every word that people say. We do 360s where we find trends and themes and we work the trends instead of people getting all caught up on one phrase or one person. One person is one person. Not everybody's going to love you. But what are the trends and the themes that are going to give you some insight on yourself for the things that are hard for you to see? So those are the two tools that we use.
That.
What do you use?
Well, different tools at different times. I'm often a fan of the Kolbe Index, Kolbe A, which is about, how people problem solve, which I think is very helpful for people to understand about themselves and to understand about their team members when they're building teams and how to delegate and who to delegate to. So that's one that I've leaned on numerous times. It's been a while since I've used this one, but the Fascinate, which is what it's called, Sally Hogshead's Fascinate profile. That one works a little bit more towards branding and marketing and thinking about how to present yourself to the world and the qualities of yourself that if you embrace outwardly are more likely to attract people to want to work with you in whatever way that is. So that's another one that I have liked a lot in the past, if that's an issue we're talking about. But one of the things I want to highlight, besides, some great tools that you brought up, is for everyone out there, you have just demonstrated probably one of the best qualities you can learn, which you just said, like being self-aware and being honest about yourself. You can be honest and confident about your weaknesses and challenges. And I bet none of you, as you were listening to that, were thinking, oh, now Tammy's not so cool, right? You probably liked her even more. And I think so many leaders in their journey at one point have to go through this place where they figure out how to bravely and confidently say, I don't know, or I'm not good at that, or I need to work on this thing. And I just let you just like demonstrated it so perfectly. So thank you for that, for all of our listeners to do that.
Yeah, that piece of being vulnerable, that piece of being honest. I think when we start our careers as leaders, we think we have to be perfect or show people that we're perfect. And in fact, if we go to Brene Brown,
Yep.
right, that piece of saying being authentically who you are, and every person, good, bad, and ugly, every single human being, it's when you embrace all of that, that people will be drawn to you. It's also when you embrace all of that, that you have the chance to
Yeah.
grow. And I'm 63. I'm not done yet, right? And so many people come to the end of their career and they're like, I'll just kind of slide into home base slowly. And I'm like, I'm still on second base. I got stuff to do. And I think that's the piece, is recognize you always have the opportunity to like not be done yet. What is the next challenge for you? Where's the place you want to go? And I don't know that I'll ever be
Yeah.
done. I hope my mom is 93. I hope when I'm 93, I'm still looking at
I
new
love
mountains.
it. I love it. I think that, you've just another leadership practice that I often talk about is the importance of needing a way to safely push yourself in doing scary things. your joyful
Nice.
practice in scary things. For me, it's sailboat racing. And there's many scary things that happen, but like I choose to get on that sailboat and do a race, right? Like nobody's forcing me. Like it is a very privileged activity, right? And so my next level for me now is I'm starting to do races. I'm going to in the spring. I've just, locked myself into it by promising other people that now I have to do it, right? That's how I create an escape. So I have to. The scary thing is now traveling with a sailboat. And of course, I picked my first race is going to be like 1,000 miles away. So driving, a 5,000-pound load, a 26-foot sailboat, like the sailing piece isn't as scary as it was when I was younger, but now I'm leveling up. I like to keep it. It is my practice in being scared, and always the lesson every single time is you push yourself to do something scary and you go, "Oh, I could do that." Right? Because in the moment, you're not freaking out when you really do something hard and scary. You're not like, you're actually like, "I got this. We can get through this." And then you're like, "I got through it." And you're that much stronger in the next activity. So
I love that story and love the fact that you're doing that. Phrase we sometimes use is go to the places that
mhm.
scare you. And that's a perfect example of that spot. And that's the growth spot. That's kind of feels like the valley, but it's not. It's actually you're on your way to the
That's right.
mountaintop.
And I
I love
always am
that.
intentionally putting myself in a new valley but it's by choice, right? I'm not these aren't,
Right.
it's not like something that's happening to me. I am not a victim in any way. And so it makes a nice playground to practice in, right? To experiment in doing scary things, going back to what you said
Yeah.
earlier about running experiments and being able to do that. Wow. Well, the time is just flying,
I
flying
know.
by.
I know. So can we just talk for another
That's
couple
good.
hours? Because this is totally working for me.
I want to talk about, since we do have so little time, really, I think we've kind of honed in on a theme about leaders being people who become self aware and leveling up and leveling other people up around them. And that coaching is really an important tool in doing that. Um, Maybe an insight you could share with us before we do have to go is, can you tell me a little bit about the similarities or differences you see between leadership coaching in the nonprofit space and leadership coaching in the for-profit space? And I'll only add that what I have seen is that leadership coaching has been wildly embraced in the for-profit space, and it kind of hasn't really been embraced that strongly, but it's beginning to be a thing in the nonprofit space. And that's why I share that, because
So
that is why I'm asking this question, to understand more about the differences.
one of the pieces that I think is very different from for profit and non for profit, and we work with both. I would tell you we're probably half and half when you look at our clients that we've been with for years and years and years. For profit has a tendency to say we need to invest in order for us to grow, to level up, to use your language. And they are willing to take money, time, effort, and energy and put it into things where they will then see opportunity for that level up. Nonprofits have a tendency to say, we need to be really careful about our money. And in making and kind of having that focus of saying we have to be very careful about, cash in our organization, we miss the opportunities to invest. And we need to invest in our leaders that are currently in those spaces so that we are sustainable and we continue our mission. We also need to invest in the next group that's coming behind. Because if we don't, when all of us leave the workforce and we don't have someone behind us to carry on that good work, we are not keeping this mission alive. We are not moving our organizations forward beyond this. And coaching is one of those places with the right human being who wants to grow, who says, I know that I'm not perfect, and with support, with conversation, with thinking things through, I can level up. I can become more. That's what we should do. But we're doing it because we're self-sacrificing. And I'm saying, hey, that is it's nice. It's not necessarily wise.
Yeah.
Wisdom is recognizing that when you invest in the right place, there is a return on that investment. And if you are an executive leader, if you are sitting in that seat in a nonprofit, don't sacrifice yourself. Invest in yourself to take your nonprofit to the next step.
That's so powerful. I almost was crying because that is what I believe so clearly. And when I hope everybody will take a moment and rewind and listen to what you just said, where you started that comment about for-profits investing in people and in resources in getting to the next level. Our nonprofit missions, for the most part, are so much more important than the for-profit missions. It really hurts when I see nonprofits not doing these things that for-profits know make you grow. They do generate returns. And I just want everybody to hear that all over the world in the nonprofits, because we so desperately need to be investing in growth. How can we solve the world's most complex problems if we're not investing in growth, in innovation? It's just not going to happen. We'll stay very small and people will literally die as a result.
It's Sarah, I'm from the Midwest. Okay. In the Midwest, we have a lot of rural places, and they solve things with duct tape and bell wire. Nonprofits have a tendency to I'm going to grab the duct tape, I'm going to grab the bell wire. But you know what? After a while, that duct tape and that bell wire costs more than if you had invested in the beginning. Yeah. And if you really want your nonprofit to do what it is made to do, let's get the very best leaders, not the leaders that are going to work for this amount of money or no one's going to invest in them, right? No, guys, think this way. You get the best people, you invest in those people, they will drive your mission and get it done. And we need to look at that differently in the nonprofit world, okay? We want our best and our brightest there, not making $17 million a year for themselves, right? That's right.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Well, for those who want to keep the conversation going or saying, yes, that's for me, who should be getting in touch with you and what's the best way to do that?
We really love to work with nonprofits who are saying, I'm not satisfied. We're good. I'm happy. I'm pleased that we got to this level and I'm not done yet. And we want to level up. We want to become more. And honestly, that's the kind of organization that we are pumped to work with. And we're very fortunate. We get to kind of choose. We're in a place in our life where when we are really aligned in what we think and what we feel and what we believe, we say yes. And we would love to say yes to people who are ready for that step, right? So that's what Become More Group is about. It's helping others become more, whether that's an individual, a team, or an organization. And if somebody's ready for that, we're all in.
Excellent. And what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
You can reach me, Tammy, at Become More GP. And Tammy is with a Y, TAMMY, at becomemoregp.com. You can go to our website, which is just becomemoregp.com. Or you can listen to our podcast, which is The Leadership Line. And that would be another way to kind of connect and see what we're really about. And we'd love to have people join us there. So thank you for asking.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Tammy, for joining me. Please thank Scott for almost joining and for all of his work that he does. And thank you out there for listening, but also for all that you do to make our communities better. This podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders. And I want to help you unleash your full potential to advance the missions I know you care about so deeply. I've been in your shoes. I've been an executive director multiple times, a founder, a board member, a foundation executive director, and now it's such an honor to be a consultant and coach. And that is why, in addition to having special guests like Tammy, I bring you weekly bite-sized actionable tips into your email box. And if you would like to get those tips in your inbox, you can go to inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. In the meantime, please take a moment to leave a review for this podcast. It makes such a big difference in helping your fellow nonprofit leaders find it because it boosts the algorithm in nonprofit podcast world. And before I sign off completely, I want to say, take some time for self-care. Take some brain time and time for reflection. Take a break from the game of whack-a-mole. And I will see you next time.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.